faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. You're listening to Freedom Rings. I'm your host, Senator Marsha Blackburn. Hi there, everybody, and what a treat we have for you today on Freedom Rings. I am so thrilled that you are joining us and so pleased to introduce you to Knox County Mayor Glenn Jacobs. Glenn is someone who has a deep love of country and of public service, and I have so enjoyed working with him as he took the reins over as the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. Now, Glenn grew up in a military family. He was actually born when his father was stationed over in Spain, growing up in Missouri, coming to Tennessee, having his career. He and Crystal have 2 children, great family, and now they have grandchildren. So Glenn is someone who has seen freedom all of his life, or seeing the benefits of freedom, enjoyed that freedom, and knows what it is to fight for freedom. So, Mayor, welcome to Freedom Rings.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate it. And thank you for all the work that you do representing the great state of Tennessee and Washington, D.C.
Well, it is my honor and privilege to be there in Washington fighting for Tennesseans, taking some good old Tennessee to Washington, D.C. We know that Washington could use a little bit more of Tennessee and Tennessee values and approaching our problems, trying to fix those problems. I'd like for you to just talk for a moment about how being a child of the member of our nation's military, how that influenced you.
My dad was a 21-year military veteran. The actual military service in our family precedes him. My grandfather was awarded a Purple Heart during service in World War I in Europe. So it runs all through my family. But Dad was a 21-year military veteran. He served in the Navy on the USS Antietam aircraft carrier during the Korean War. Then he switched services after about 10 years in the Navy to the Air Force. He was in the Air Force for 11 years, served in Vietnam. He was a load master on like the C-17 and the C-130 cargo planes through Vietnam. Came back stateside when I was about a year old. As you mentioned, I was born in Madrid, Spain at Torrejon Air Base. He retired when I was 4 years old. My brother and sister, they got the typical upbringing. They're older than I am, so they lived all over the world. Went to a bunch of different schools. I didn't do that, but nevertheless, I think about what my dad did and my grandfather as well, and the sacrifices they made so that people like me could enjoy the freedoms that I enjoy in this country. That's really what it's all about. Our military in the U.S. is unique in that they don't swear an oath, a pledge allegiance to a person or the government. It's actually to defend the Constitution, which protects all of our freedoms and liberties. And that just has always resonated with me. The thought that, we're just so unique in this country. We're built on an idea, the idea that all people are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights, and government's primary job is to protect those rights and to protect our freedoms, which makes us unique in the history of the world. And I think my dad's service in the military really drove that home to me, especially as I reflect back on my life and in his and my upbringing, and I realize how important that is and how special that makes our country.
Well, I agree with you on that. Having a dad that served in World War II, and my mom always would say, well, I was a war bride. is how she would describe herself many times. And they married, and of course, they were right off to a military post in Florida. And that is how life began for them, but extremely patriotic. God and country was so incredibly important to them. And I think that for those of us that have parents that served in the military or spouses that served in the military, there is that deep appreciation for that service and the hope that the service we provide as public servants does honor to the service and sacrifice that those military families have made. You stepped in, your first political race was running for mayor of Knox County, and that was a pretty close campaign. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, ma'am. Of course, I spent many years in World Wrestling Entertainment. As my career was winding down, I was looking at what my next steps in life would be. I've always been interested in government politics, and thought that that might be something that I wanted to do. The mayor seat was coming open. My predecessor, now Congressman Tim Burchett, was term limited. So kind of when I was looking strategically, I was like, that's a seat that I might be able to win. It's a big campaign. Knox County has 450,000 people. So it certainly wasn't a little bitty race. But not having to run against an incumbent is always advantageous to someone new to politics. So I thought it was something I could do, thought that it was something that I would enjoy. I thought that, just with my experience actually in WWE and kind of that business background that I had learned from there, as well as my philosophy, which is, conservative, kind of libertarian values. I thought that would resonate with people of Knox County. So I decided to run that race. Won the primary by 23 votes. It was a 3-person race out of about 48,000 votes cast. And then of course, once the Republican primary, we're a strongly Republican county. So that's where most of the energy went. Once you win the primary, the general election hopefully wouldn't be nearly as hard, and it wasn't. But it's playing sports and athletics all my life. I used to competition, but the difference is in a game, you can alter your game plan based on where the score is, right? Well, in an election, you have to run your game plan and then you find out if it was any good or not on election day. So that was very different for me. And winning by 23 votes was probably on election night the most stressful day of my life, because the whole time was back and forth, and within a couple hundred votes, couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, and it was literally like a wrestling match, because all through the night I was behind and catching up, and then finally got ahead. But then one of my opponents was able to chip away at that lead, and then finally, like I said, winning by 23 votes. It was exhilarating, but not something I'd want to go through again, actually.
It's always a learning experience. And every campaign is a little bit different. Well, so you're there as the mayor of Knox County. And as you said, it is not a little county. It is a large county, and it is a growing county. And I know that your love of freedom underpins every decision that you make. So talk about how it influences some of the policy issues that you confront each day.
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. And I think a lot of folks, especially at the local level, they get into politics and government. They want to do good things, of course, for their community, but they may not have a philosophy which undergirds that, which is really their guiding principles. And, then they just kind of, well, I think this is a good idea. I don't think this is a good idea. With me, it definitely is, does this grow government, Hopefully, does it shrink government? Is there a financial burden attached to this? Is there a fiscal burden? We talk about it, raising taxes, which I'm not going to do. Those are all things that really play into the decisions that I make here at a local level. And local government's really important. And this, from your service at the state, everybody thinks we look at Washington, D.C. and man, that's where everything happens. And that's true. The federal government's very important, but state and local government is really where the rubber meets the road. The issues that we tackle
That's
here.
so true. Yes.
They have a big impact on people's day-to-day life. And it's not only, there's kind of two parts to it. It's not only the political side, but also kind of the organizational side and the company side, as far as, we're the ones that are in charge of building roads, figuring out where the roads need to go and all that sort of stuff. So you have to balance that, but also I realize that everything government does, it relies on taking money from people to provide those services. So I have to balance those things and make sure that what we're doing, people are getting their money's worth as much as possible. And, hopefully what we do also allows people to make their, to give them more ability to make their own decisions and to have control over their lives.
Well, and that is something that we like to see is more responsibility at the local level. I like to say that the government that is most effective is the government that is closest to you, because you see the impact every day right there in your community as you're coming and going from school and from work, and it affects your daily life, and you see that. And of course, every time government raises taxes on the people to pay for a growing government, there's a cost to that. And not only is it that fiscal cost, as you were talking about it, but it's also an opportunity cost, because opportunities are being taken away from the not-for-profit and from the private sector, free enterprise, and those opportunities are then being vested in the government. So it takes the people, as we are to be, out of that process.
That's exactly right. And I absolutely agree with you also about local government and state government and how important they are. And you mentioned earlier that Knox County is growing. The state of Tennessee is growing. We're seeing people move here from the high tax, high regulation, low freedom jurisdictions. And folks are moving with their feet. And what that reveals to me is conservative principles work. The state of Tennessee is in a great spot. We're the third most friendly state and local tax jurisdiction in the country. We don't have any state debt. Economic opportunity here is, compared to some places in the country, I mean, it's just literally outrageous. And people are taking advantage of that. And that's a wonderful thing. And the reason that we have the freedom to do that as local government is because we're not micromanaged to the extent that we don't micromanage, and we're not micromanaged to the extent that other places are. So America has always been kind of this laboratory of freedom, right? And the different states compete. And you can actually see in the case of Tennessee and in the case of Knox County, the benefits that we're realizing by staying true to our principles of small government and maximizing freedom.
Well, that is so true. Now, as we wrap this up, a couple of questions. What do you see in the future for Knox County?
Well, for me, I want Knox County to be a place that the rest of the country looks to and says they're doing it right there. Ronald Reagan talked about the shining city on the hill. And I think that's true not only of America for the rest of the world, but also places within America, and a place where the rest of the country can look to and say, man, that's just a great place to live, to work, and raise a family. I think we're already the best place. That's why I live here, but we can always make it better. So for me, again, that's just my overriding goal is to make Knox County in whatever way I can, but to help make it be the best place that we can possibly be.
Well, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to tell your story. And we know that you have great hopes for Knox County. So the last question for you, when you and Crystal look at those grandkids, what is your hope for them?
Really, I got into politics because I have had so many wonderful opportunities in my life. I grew up on a farm in Missouri, a very rural area of the country. If you'd have asked me when I was a little kid, am I going to be able to travel the world and do all these amazing things and have all these opportunities and just be so blessed? No way. I mean, it just wouldn't. I didn't think that was possible. And because I live in America, because I live in a country based on the free enterprise system, those opportunities do come your way. And I was very fortunate that they came my way and I was able to take advantage of them. I want that for my grandkids. The thing that we can leave our folks, our kids and our grandkids, again, going back to President Reagan, freedom is always only one generation away from extinction. I don't want it to be my generation that allows that to happen. So I try to do everything I can to ensure that my grandkids are going to have the opportunities that, frankly, they deserve as Americans, that are their birthright as Americans.
Well, Mayor Glenn Jacobs, you are doing an incredible job, and you have really established yourself as a happy warrior freedom fighter. And we are just so grateful that you have chosen to lead Knox County. And for all of you listeners, you are going to find him on social media, Mayor Glenn Jacobs, and our Freedom Rings podcast. You're going to be able to find that wherever you pull down your favorite podcast, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you so much, Senator. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Freedom Rings. You can follow me on Twitter at Vote Marsha, Facebook at Marsha Blackburn for Senate, and on Instagram at Team Marsha. And you can always find us online at marshablackburn.com. The Freedom Rings podcast is edited and produced by Jared Cummings. Executive producers are Conservative Partnership Center and Marsha Blackburn. Together, we make Freedom Ring.